So I grew up in a household of teachers. And so I always thought I was going to end up trying to be an educator, really just to work with cool kids and help them on their journey. And then I found out what that made. And I was a product of growing up in the 90s in the UK. And so things like money did come into the conversation quite a lot. And so I picked a different path. But when I think about Ambyint, yes, it's venture capital backed. So a lot of the conversation is geared towards the financials and all that sort of stuff. And we will have a successful financial run here. I know we will. But what I think about more is we've got an opportunity to build the company the right way. And I've worked in many, so I've got a view on that. I'm very lucky. Dr. Ferdinand Hingel, my CTO, he's come out of academia. He's a wonderful guy, just a real human character. And we spent a lot of time talking about how we're going to build this company in a way that we can look back and say we did it the right way.
Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of The Founder Mindset, brought to you by ATB. I'm your host, Leah Sarich, and I'm delighted to be back for another season of talking to founders about what it's really like to build a company from that first big idea. If you've listened to previous episodes, you know I was a journalist for over 20 years, so I'm more curious about why anyone would ever want to become an entrepreneur. Not so much about the business model, product market fit, and so on. I want to understand why entrepreneurs keep going, why they think they're the ones to solve a massive problem, why they want to make a real impact in the world. And if you're here, I bet you want to know why too. Let's find out. Joining me today in studio is Benjamin Kemp, CEO of Ambyint, an AI-powered production optimization platform accelerating the oil and gas sector's progress towards a more sustainable future. Benjamin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Leah. I know it's taken us a while to figure this out. You've been very patient with me.
I've been very patient, but I'm so glad you can join us. So this is so fun. So fun. Well, most of the founders that I have sitting in this chair are the founders of the company. In your case, every once in a while, we actually talk to a venture builder who didn't found the company, but came in to fix it, but has this founder mindset. And that's why you're here today. So thank you for being here. But I need to get to this. Like, how did you even get to entrepreneurship? Because I was doing a little research, Benjamin, as I do. And you've worked with all the big global technology leaders like Xerox and Oracle and IBM. So how did you get into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so started a small family-run company in the UK. So privately owned, was a highly effective org. So I love what they did. When I came to Canada, though, I was like, right, I'm going to reinvent myself. And so went after the big corporate stuff. Enjoyed tech, but I've only ever enjoyed tech because it helps people work smarter. And so it wasn't like the bits and bytes that got me excited.
Right.
It's always been on the outcome side of the conversation.
Oh, cool.
And when I was at Xerox, I loved all the Lean Six Sigma work that they did, and I thought that was exceptional. So my business acumen really grew. But what I was finding was, my biggest job I had in the big tech world, I was a global guy for Oracle, which was, when I got the job, I was like, oh, look at me.
Yeah.
But, on a good day, Oracle was great. But on a bad day, you were just a cog in the wheel.
Right.
And I really started to feel that because I've always considered myself a bit of a change agent. And so this idea that I'm in a company that even if I had an exceptional day, some people wouldn't even know. It just eventually started to compound for me.
Right.
And with all the experience I had, I wanted to put it to use all the time, not just parts of my day.
Yeah.
And so then I pivoted and went smaller and much more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So I worked with a family-owned company with an owner that was exceptional, but she was quite open. She's like, I know my way around the market. I know everybody in the market, and I could really do with someone that can take us to the next level. And what was crazy about that is that's actually, of all the deals I've ever done, in that firm was the time I did my biggest ever deal.
Really?
Yeah. So smallest firm I've ever worked for wrote the biggest ever deal that I've ever done for the company. I had a big portfolio. I really enjoyed it. She gave me tons of latitude. But she was like a diehard entrepreneur, had really just kind of knew one environment, one thing.
Right.
And one of the biggest compliments she ever gave me, so we parted ways in the end and for the right reasons. But when we parted ways, she wrote me a beautiful card and she said, you made me a better CEO of the company I was at and you challenged me more than anybody.
Oh, lovely.
And so, once I'd done that, I was like, I want to keep doing that. And I actually landed up having my own shop for a while. I'm a late stage dad. And so as soon as we found out we had a viable pregnancy, my wife's like, look, all this consulting and all this fun stuff you're doing, that comes to an end. You got to go get a real job again. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
And so, and I was actually working for a energy company by the form of Husky Energy at the time.
Okay.
And that's where I got to see Ambyint.
Right.
And I was intrigued about their offering.
Right.
And I was like, I want to get involved in that.
Cool. I love this for you. So you really got to the point where you figured out what it is that you love to do and what is unique to you in terms of what you can offer companies as they build, which is really, really cool. But you said you mentioned this, that you sort of like working with these sort of high performance teams and you call yourself this change agent and that kind of thing. That sounds a little bit intense to me. Is
Well, if you spend time really around, but intense.
I love this.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
My
So
team literally like don't let him have any coffee ever. And I've got a cup of coffee in my hand, but that's just to keep you going through this. No, look, I'm really into what I do.
Yeah.
And so I'm a bit older now. So as I look back, I go, holy moly. I feel, one of the, my first ever corporate HR person is a very dear friend of mine
Yes.
by the name of Shelley Ralston. And she's a senior chief HR officer in town with a big company. And I met her way too often in my first year at Xerox for all the wrong reasons. And she's like, it don't work like that here, son. But, I'm all in. So it's
Yeah.
like, you can't get half of it.
No, you
It's
can't dial
either
that
or.
back. Yeah.
But the thing for me is I'm really people first, people centric. And so, yes, I can do tough love and those things to help people grow, but I really enjoy being around people and helping them. And
Yeah.
so you can take all that intensity when you really peel it back. The intentional value is really high,
Yeah.
typically.
Yes.
But I have my moments
Well,
too,
don't we
like
all?
everybody else.
Yes, don't we all? Exactly. So you're doing this work and then you end up at Ambyint.
Yeah.
So tell me how that happened. Like, how did you even decide to take on this challenge?
Well, I took a massive flyer. So once I got my head around, I need to go get a job.
Yeah.
Because having my own company was fun, but it came in peaks and valleys.
Of course.
And, ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
So the two things were I was working for a producer and saw Ambyint's value.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see it from the customer side,
Right.
which is a real big tell. You don't often get to see that when you go to work for someone. You're often looking at what they tell you it is, whereas I was getting
Right.
it from the customer's perspective.
Oh, that's cool.
I knocked on the door and said, hey, I want to be part of this. And
Oh.
they were like, okay, well, come in and help us in Canada. And I'm like, sure. And I was only there less than a week. And then we saw material changes in the company.
Oh.
And so the timing was really bizarre. So I told my wife, because at the time I had a few offers on the table.
Yes.
2 of them would take me back to big corporate tech jobs.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I will if I have to, because
Sure.
we'd worked really hard to create a family. And that was the most important thing for me.
Right.
So what I got to do is less important than supporting that. But I was like, well, I'll go to Ambyint. And then days in, we get a call that it's been a board shuffle. The board had created a shuffle of the management team and all this stuff. And my wife's like, see, I told you shouldn't have gone there. And I'm like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be
okay.
fine. And it's kind of been like that ever since. And so whilst I'm back in an employee position, and a partial ownership position, it's not been the stability of my old corporate world.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just do a 101 on Ambyint. So
Okay.
tell me a little bit about what the company is and what they do.
Yeah, so the company, in my mind, it's really, really cool what they do. So when you strip it all back and, you'll hear all these different buzzwords that you hear with tech, and we're the worst in tech for buzzy words and sort of getting people hyped about that. But at the end of the day, when you're a producer, once you have drilled a well and it's no longer free flowing, it becomes a job to go and get the yield from that well.
Okay.
The passion for producers is often on getting those wells that they hit lucky with. So that's the drilling and completion side. So that's where a lot of the focus is.
Right.
Once it's into sort of a yield position, it's really in a decline.
Right.
Now, some of these can go for 50 years, but it's really on a decline curve. So the attention of the company as you go through that decline curve gets lower and lower.
Right.
Right. And the priority is always to the highest yield. And so what that means is you've got across North America, you've got 1 million wells that have got lift systems on them that are in that decline stage.
Okay.
And they're getting less and less attention over time.
Right.
And Ambyint has figured out how to control those wells with no human in the loop, using a combination of physics models and machine learning and AI, artificial intelligence methods, using pattern recognition, all these things. So we're actually controlling wellheads over 10,500 wells right now with no human in the loop.
With no humans.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
No wonder you like that.
Yeah. And look, we get put in this bucket of, data and analytics, surveillance, and all this sort of anomaly detection, which is cool. And lots of people do that.
Yeah.
Our claim to fame, though, is this true autonomous control that we've created. And that's kind of our spearhead. And we're the only ones doing that right now at scale. And we're doing that right here in Calgary, which is pretty cool.
It's so cool. I love this. So tell me a little bit about what it was actually like, though, to come into this company. You kind of glossed over it. I'm a little bit curious about what that actually looks like when you come in from the outside and
Yeah.
have to do this thing, like as the CEO.
Yeah. So look, when they called me, when the board called me and said, it was actually the CFO at the time, they drafted in a CFO to kind of get it all tuned up.
Yeah.
And he'd come from oil and gas, but he
Mm.
hadn't necessarily worked in smaller environments.
Mm.
My first reaction was like, easy, I got to get this through at home.
Yeah.
I don't think we're signed up for this. And so I was a bit reluctant at first.
Sure.
And I actually went to my mentor and coach, a lifelong friend, and said, hey, what do you think? And he's like, buddy, what are you doing? Like, get to it. But you do, when you come out of those different environments, you start to
Sure.
think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You go, okay, so this will be my first formal CEO title. In my mind, the 25 years I've been at this, I had a playbook in my mind that I could apply.
Right.
So why wouldn't I go for it and
Right.
forget about the consequences or whatever that might look
Yeah.
like? But we went to work and we
Yeah.
didn't waste a second. Like
Right.
we were 15 minutes into the job, I'd made adjustments
Wow.
in the company.
Wow.
Because you got to go quick or else it gets away from you.
No kidding. But what's that like to just, I mean, where do you even get the confidence to come in and go, okay, I see it. We need to make this change. It's been 15 minutes. Here we go.
Well, because you've got a playbook in your mind and it's all based on intuition. Yes, you've got data, but you got to go with your gut, right? Especially when your back's against the wall,
Sure.
right? Like you don't really have a lot of time. So funny sidebar. So I drive in with my wife, right?
Yeah.
And we go in, commute to work together. And she's like, so what's on your plate for today? And I'd go through it and she'd look at me like, well, how do you know what the hell you're going to do? And I'm like, I don't. And so after about 2 weeks of this, I was like, hey, you know what? We can't do this in the car in the mornings. I'm like, why? I'm like, I'm a fairly confident guy. You are killing my confidence because you are recognizing she's a nurse by trade.
Oh.
So, you study,
Yes.
then you practice,
Right.
then you apply.
Yes.
Right? And so she's all like, how are you knowing these moves to make,
Right.
given that there's no study,
Right.
whatever. I'm like, well, it's business. And this is the entrepreneurial bit, right?
Right.
But where I'm a slightly bit different is I've got frameworks that have been
Yes.
instilled in me for
Mm.
25 years.
Right. Right.
So when I'm operating with instinct, I'm putting it against a framework.
Right.
So for example, one of my big ones is think, no, prove, right? So which bucket are we in?
Oh, cool.
So a lot of entrepreneurs, when you talk to them, I think, I feel, I think.
Right.
What do you know?
Yes.
And what can you prove? And so for me,
I
that's
like
my
this.
decision tree. And you're not always going to have data to prove it.
Right.
Sometimes you're in that kind of no,
Yeah.
right? So you've got some data, but it's not necessarily hard-coded data. So you kind of
Right.
like got these. But when you're making decisions, my decision tree is am I think, no, or prove. And that allows me to go, am I secure in my thinking or am I going to take a flyer on this one? Because I'm not at that stage. And what do I need to do to get to that stage? And do we have the luxury of time to get there? So it's sort of this constant working framework in the background.
That's cool.
Whereas a lot of entrepreneurs haven't had the luxury. of
Right.
that.
They don't know this. Yeah.
And so they've got nothing to kind of pin it back to. And so, which is why I got heavily involved in VMSA here locally.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a couple of CEOs. And that's because for me, I'm passionate about ensuring they're entirely successful. And for them, a lot of times it's you've got the spirit, you've clearly got the tenacity to go out there and make it happen and believe. Now you got to back it up with some stuff. And so most of my stuff is steering them towards some frameworks that can start to allow them to think clearly, especially as they scale their companies. Because in
Yeah.
the early days, you can kind of wing it.
Yeah.
But there's a point at which winging it's kind of gone out the window, especially if you venture capital back, because you got a board and
Right.
responsibilities against those things.
Yeah. And how many employees do you have roughly now?
Right now we're at 62.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
we
exciting.
scaled up quite a bit. We secured a grant in partnership with Thin Air Labs, actually,
Right, yeah.
with Emissions Reduction Alberta.
Yes.
And it's a really, really interesting thesis behind that grant, but that allowed us to hire incremental heads associated with that we wouldn't have been able to hire under our own means. So
And that was a pretty massive grant, if I'm not mistaken.
for us, it was, yeah. I mean, and generally got a lot of press. So yeah, it's 4.1 million Canadian over 2 years.
Whoa.
So
That's huge.
yeah, and it's allowed us to add an incremental 11 heads into the business.
Oh, wow.
For a company of our size, that's significant.
Significant.
And I
Yeah.
have to tell you, I'm proud as punch of the team. So we had to do it quickly. So we knew when a grant's potentially coming, you got to be ready to go, but you can't obviously go until you've
Have
got
the
the
cash,
green
yeah.
light. But we managed to secure 11 heads, and I think it took us 9 weeks in total. And I can't tell you the quality of talent that's come through the door.
Wow. 9 weeks?
Yeah.
11 people?
Yeah,
That seems nuts to me.
yeah. It was fun.
I love how your eyebrows shoot up to the top of your head.
Well,
That's fun.
I love the people recruitment side of it. I really enjoy all that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. But as we know, of course, with the evolution of every company, whether it's a small one or even these big enterprise operations, there's a moment that feels a little bit like a do or die moment. That's really pivotal. That's the go or no go moment. Can you sort of reflect on one of those stories for me?
Yeah, I've got a lot, so I'll narrow it down to the one. I think the big one for me was, so just to give you a bit of context, when I joined, about a year and a half before that, they closed a round of money that was led by all American investors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, given its value prop and where it was going, directionally, this looked real hot, right? Ambyint was a hot name in the market, looked hot. And so it was moved from a Canadian company to a US company.
Okay.
Primary driver is there's lots of tax advantages for US investors if it's a US company.
Right.
So I knew of Ambyint, and I'm like, you've moved? What a shame, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a great story here locally. Shame to see it leave.
Mm-hmm.
So when I took over, one of my goals was to bring it back.
Wow.
You remember that song? Bring it back.
Yes.
Anyhow, so I used to play that in my head a lot, but I was like, the timing just is not right.
Right.
Now we're into rebuilding foundationally, and I wanted to bring it back. And so we did. It cost us 7 months, a ton of capital to do it. And not capital that people could be like, oh, that makes sense to do so. And it was all on the basis that we'd be able to do a couple of things. One is we'd be able to raise incremental capital. And the second thing was in that capital raise that it would be more Canadian focused, which will allow us to recertify as a Canadian company.
Okay.
Because there are really progressive programs in Canada that you just don't see in the US. So one of those is, often people will hear about these SR&ED programs, right? Which is real and credit-based tax offsets relative to your R&D work in a company, which is really important for a scaling tech company like ours.
Sure.
Wouldn't have been able to do that in the US, can do it in Canada. And then the other piece was non-dilutive capital. So we see much more progressive programs on non-dilutive capital in Canada than we do in the US.
Oh.
And so we tied it to a capital raise, and that's where we were lucky enough to partner up with BDC on the venture capital side, and a chap called Juan Benitez, who's now my independent board chair. And Juan's a great guy, really lucky to get to work with him. He's a really good human. He's been in the oil and gas sector and exited his own company. So his experience is firsthand. He's hyper networked and he really cares. So he was all like pro Ambyint. And so he helped us with BDC. But, they can't invest unless you're Canadian. But I believed it was the right decision, not only for the company, but also for the ecosystem. Have Ambyint leave and not be part of its origins and where it's from and the success we're going to see. I just felt like it'd be a real gap if we didn't do that. So we pulled that off. And so vindication one is BDC have put 2 rounds of money into Ambyint. And then secondly, we were able to secure that non-dilutive grant of a good size with ERA and Justin Reimer and his crew. So, it all made sense in the end. But at the time, there were many tough calls where they're like, what are you doing over there? Like, what are you doing?
Okay, so what does that feel like?
Awful. Like, what do you think it feels like? I mean, you've got both sides going, right? You've got the two shoulders talking to each other and you're in the middle going, and so this is, again, think, no, prove, right? And so I'm living in I know this is the right decision. I can't prove it right now. And so that was the ticker. But you look back now and it's all vindicated and it's all high fives and everyone's loving it.
Right.
But we didn't know that at the time. And it wasn't blind faith we were doing it with. We could see a path.
Sure.
But it was going to take a while to get it done. And you weren't going to be able to go bring it back that day and then it's all vindicated right away. Right. So it was about we did that in mid-23 and really only vindicated starting this year. So it's sort of like, you got to have a bit of patience on that.
Okay, see, now that just gives me anxiety thinking about it, honestly. Like, I mean, I honestly can't even imagine what that would be like. Because you're really, so, I mean, I think you would call it a calculated risk to a certain extent. Like, you could see the path. But to your point, you're answering to the board and they're saying, what are you doing? And you've got to say, we just got to do it. You got to trust me on this.
Well, and then, when we did bring it back, we did a bit of a shout out in the community and everything else. And then there was and we got lots of really good PR around it, which was good. But one piece of PR that I didn't enjoy was, why on earth have you, like in the public domain, why on earth have you done that? Everyone else is going the other way. What are you doing? And I'm like, really? That's what you wanted to write up? So we'll see. And look, that pressure doesn't go away because ultimately my sector is oil and gas.
Mhm.
And as you know, we've got a really healthy and high potential oil and gas opportunity in Canada, but it doesn't even come close to the size of the opportunity in the US. So this is a very US dominant sector.
Right.
And so if we were ever to be sort of acquired, it's probably a US buyer buying us. So we will deal with this again in our future.
Right.
But for now, it felt right to me, and
Yeah.
it felt like the thing to do. And yes, it was contentious, but really happy with the way we kind of stayed strong to what we saw and got it done.
So, what have you learned moving through that experience about yourself as a venture builder?
I think the two things are the point in time decisions you make, you really have to plot them somehow.
Mm.
What seems like, yeah, we're doing that decision at the moment. And look, I have total respect for the guys that had to make that decision previously. It was actually tied to some of the investments. Their hands
Makes
were tied.
sense.
You
Yeah.
need money to run a company. Those are the moves you got to make. But
Yeah.
I think it's just being more thoughtful about the decision you make today. It's okay to make that decision, but make sure you've really run it through its 10 moves, right? Like,
Right.
what does that look like on the right side? What's that look like on the wrong side? And how could this come back to bite me later down the road?
Right.
I think that's, I've always been a 3 moves ahead.
Yeah.
This feels like a 10 move ahead. And I think that was the learning for me was like, as you make these decisions, and when you're in sort of that fight or flight mode, it's sort of like, what's right in front of you? Just make that decision, go and move on. Don't look back. But on some of them, if they're big, you've really got to, think that through.
No kidding.
The Founder Mindset is brought to you by ATB Financial. In the fast-paced world of tech, your banking needs evolve as quickly as your industry. Whether you're just starting out or aiming to reach new heights, ATB Financial is dedicated to supporting tech companies every step of the way. Partner with ATB Financial for a banking solution that grows with your business.
Ooh, okay, so moving on from that. Now, of course, in the background of all of that decision making and the move is your family.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does being the CEO of Ambyint affect you in your personal life?
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate. My significant other, my wife, she has always said when we have a big decision, I believe in you. You got to make the right call for you, and I'll back you 100%.
Awesome.
So I've been very lucky that way. I didn't know that when I proposed to her because we were quite young. And so we didn't ask all the questions that people ask now. What are your life goals and how are we going to behave with each other and all that? We were just in love and we're going to make it work. So,
Lovely.
so we've lucked out with that. And I think that, it's an interesting dynamic because at my age, in corporate world, a lot of people are like, this is your prime time, right? Big earning years. This is how you make your retirement work and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm rolling the dice a bit more than I did in that world.
Sure.
So that's a different dynamic. And that's one I try and keep to myself so that I'm not loading up on the family on that. But my wife's been at every stage of what we're doing. So she knows. And we talk about work a lot. We talk about what's going right, what's going wrong. But I think, all in all, it's gone reasonably well. There's just been a couple of times where it got like the look in the eye, like, what are we doing sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's only happened a couple of times.
Sure.
So all in all, I think it's, but I got to tell you, if you don't have the right support base, it all falls apart.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, because you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because something's got to give, right? And so for me, it's sort of trying to balance that around being bold and shooting for the stars, but without necessarily breaking what you've got.
Yeah.
And for me, like I told you, we worked particularly hard to bring Harper into this world. And so I'm not going to put anything that jeopardizes that on the line, right? That's just the bigger thing for me.
Absolutely. I love to talk about that because, people don't appreciate or understand what's happening for people in the background when they're making these big decisions and everything is super high stakes, when you're making those business decisions. But, also in the background, if you're bringing a little person into the world and it's not an easy journey, that is so profound. It's so hard.
Yeah.
How did you negotiate that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, look, we've done it different ways over the years. We've done written documents that says, here's the pros, here's the cons. We both sign it. So if we hit a down cycle on something or it was a bad decision, we both know and we've got something to trace against. So
That's interesting.
That was early on.
Yeah.
And now it's more like, what's your risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
And where are you at with this? And but look, there was one period that didn't go so well. So we'd worked really hard. I felt like we'd built a bit of a breath in the business so you could breathe. So I actually took a family vacation in Europe. met up with my dad and his lady, and I'm like, right, I'm actually going to have a proper vacation,
Yeah.
right? And I'm a week into the vacation, and I get this call
Oh.
from my finance guy going, yeah, we got a problem.
Oh,
And it
no.
totally derailed like the vacation and everything else.
Oh,
And so that was a really tough one.
sure.
And even the toughest part, and I promise you I won't get emotional on the
I
podcast, but
don't
the
mind.
toughest part was my dad was like, I don't like what it is doing to you.
Mm,
Like, I don't like the level of stress and the pressure. And you're a pretty solid guy. Like, you can take a lot. I don't like this for you.
right.
So now you've got,
Wow.
one of the people I respect the most in my life going, I don't think this is healthy for you. And I'm
Right.
like, Dad, this is not unpackable. Like, I'm in. Like,
Yeah.
there's no
turning back now.
like the optionality you're creating doesn't exist for me. I'm in. And so, which is why, I'm sure a lot of founders, CEOs will tell you, you don't get a lot of good feedback really.
Hmm.
Especially, if you're sort of going along the stages, because the expectations just keep ramping and ramping and
Yes.
ramping. But one of the things my board did say to me, I think it was, so I took over, it was around 23. They just said, you're the kind of founder we were looking for. Right? Like, your behaviors are exactly what we wanted. We wish we got at you earlier with some of the feedback. And so that's one compliment I hold near and dear to my heart.
For
It's
sure.
like, look, the future may be different and we may have different challenges, but for that time they were like, yeah, we wish we'd have got you a bit earlier because you could have done more. And
Yeah.
so
So that's
I
something
banked
to
that.
hang on to.
Oh, I banked that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what gets you through the hard days.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. You also talked a little bit about how doing this kind of work changes you even as a person. And you talked about, I believe the phrase, if I'm not mistaken, was brute force.
Well, yeah.
And how it's really hardened you.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so look, I'm a fairly happy-go-lucky guy. Get me on the golf course, I'm pretty fun to be with. But yeah, so there's two pieces to it. So tech, scale, high growth, it's all fun and cool, and some might argue, it's quite sexy space to be in. But the reality is, if you're going to change the way that your customer works, like fundamentally change them, that's full-on change management 101, right?
Yeah.
And change management is not easy.
No.
And then, so you've got that going on the customer side. Then you're trying to drive industry change. Then you're trying to drive company change. And then you're trying to drive people change in your own shop. You are just dealing with change stacking left, right, and center. And so at some point, you have to go, we're going this way, and that's it. And it can feel like brute force.
Yeah.
And I don't think people talk about that enough.
Right.
Because I think the shiny elements are highlighted all the time.
Sure.
But I've worked with some people, and there's a kinship. It's not because we're sadistic or anything, but those grindy, gritty, crunchy, really hard problems, people that take those on, I naturally warm to. You can just see it in their eyes, in their face, in their voice. You know that they dig in, and they dig in real hard. And they're great people, and they may have, blind spots. They may not be perfect all the time, but they dig in real hard. And so I just feel like when you take a business that had a great idea, it was trending all right, and then it hit some bumps in the road, it really needs a turnaround. But that turnaround was not a graceful, like it had to happen that minute, that day. You got to get after it. And so a lot of what those early folks would have felt from me when I was the CEO was straight up brute force. Like, we're going this way, and I'm betting on it, and we got to do it. So then you rally around people that can support you around that. But there are days where you're like, this is just more forceful than I want it to be. And often that's the register, right? When you look back and you go, why is this so hard still?
Yeah.
Right. And that's an and so what happens is you do that repeatedly over time, you just become hardened.
Yeah.
And I never want to be hard. Like I really do have a soft underbelly. And so I never want to be that tough person, but it does harden you over time. And so even things like, when you're interviewing things, you can hear it more now than you ever did before.
Yeah.
And that situational stuff, you're less likely to give people the benefit of the doubt as you get hardened, which is a shame.
Sure.
Because you may walk past someone who's super high potential. They've just had a bounce, a run of a bounce, and you become hardened now, and you're like, I can't hear it in their voice. And so it's just something to always check on yourself.
Sure.
I've
to
got
be aware of it.
Yeah, and I got a really good team around me. And so we're really diverse, the team, and
That's
quite
great.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that perspective, we're always checking and balancing each other. And then, one of the guys has the wonderful task of going, clearing his voice. I need to give you a bit of feedback. And then I'm like, okay, let's do it. And as soon as he says it, I'm ready because
Yes.
he's super honest with me.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like doing it. So I know when he's doing it, he has to do
He
it.
has
That's
to do
a
it.
really good tell for me that if he's giving me feedback, I've really got to pay attention. And,
Right.
and so I try and do that. But yeah, I forewarn people that, for all the glitz and glam, it makes you, it can really make it quite tough, which has its own qualities, but also can, if you're carrying that home, for example, that's not good.
Right.
Things like that. So.
Right. Interesting. I like that we have this part of the conversation because it really dispels some of those romantic ideas of what it looks like to be an entrepreneur. And really, the underbelly of it can be really challenging. And it's a question of how do you negotiate that with, I suppose,
my
as much grace as
concern
possible.
This is why I got involved in VMSA. So imagine you're a first-time entrepreneur, you've got a great idea.
Yeah.
And it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
Well, the glitz and the glam is, you'll do it 3 times and you'll get it right. You may actually just say, this is not for me.
Right.
Because you didn't have the support or you didn't have any kind of structure to work with. And therefore you just quit and go do something else. And then you've got an entrepreneur that was highly capable, but not ready.
Yeah.
Right? They picked the wrong idea. And so that's why I wanted to get involved in VMSA, because
Yeah.
VMSA, we're not here to make their businesses successful, we're there to make them successful.
Right.
And I love their sort of this MIT coaching model they have that's really a 3-point view. So it's not sort of one person coaching, which is a traditional mentor model, is a lot of one-on-one stuff.
Right.
This is broader, and I think that's really healthy.
Cool. Yeah.
The teams are really mixed and diverse, and so therefore opinions are different.
Oh, that's
And
neat.
I really, and honestly, most of the folks that are mentors at VMSA will tell you this. We get a lot out of it. So it keeps me honest in my day job.
Yeah.
So think about that. I'm in my day job at Platform Calgary, and then I go to that. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So it keeps you honest about where you are on your journey as a leader as well.
Oh, that's exciting. So, of course, we've talked about the challenges, but now I do want to talk about, what do you love about this work?
Oh, it's game changing. Right? Like, so when we meet with customers, and we sell to engineers in oil and gas, so legacy industry and engineers love them. They're designed to build stuff.
Right.
They're not designed to buy stuff from other people that they didn't build.
Right.
So there's a natural tendency to say, well, I didn't build it, so why would I believe in it?
Right.
So you've got all that sort of the psychology of it all, which I love. And then you've got a legacy industry that knows it needs to change, but it's still successful on its own. So it's sort of like, we'll get there when we need to get there. We have seen some more recent drivers, but I just think, it's a really exciting space to be in. But again, for me, one of the things that I realized was when I was in some of my corporate jobs, I felt like I was doing a bit of checkers. This is chess all the time. That's what's really interesting about it. And I'm not gamifying it, but that's the stimulation, is to be able to convince someone that there's a different way of doing things that's only going to make them shine. And then when we get to the other side of it, that's the bit that really excites me, as you can tell by my eyebrows. So the other side of it is then when the customer does the playback to us. And so we've had a couple of examples recently. So one customer shared with us, the chap we were dealing with, we had multiple stakeholders on a call. And I was actually on the call because I was covering for someone on vacation. And the guy said, I just want to be really clear. I moved to this company so I could work with Ambyint, because my old employer, I couldn't work with Ambyint. And I was like, holy, that's like, think about the richness of that.
Yeah.
And then the other one was, a large producer that's a household name, 2.5 years ago, basically said, we would not let you control our wellheads, sort of over my dead body kind of concept.
Right.
And now they're like, you would not be able to get that out of my hands.
Wow.
You literally wouldn't be able to get it out of my hands. I am. And he walked me through his experience. And what happened was, he kept hearing about Ambyint, and one of his colleagues was using it. So he just went by and said, can you show me what you're doing?
Yeah.
And he started showing him. And he went by again. And he's like, can you show me more? Can you show me more? Then he got onto the platform. And then he's like, no, there's no way I'm going back now.
Wow.
So that's like real change at scale, and really exciting. Now, the interesting component is we do see a difference between the US and the Canadian market in terms of adoption. And I'd really like to see Canada go a bit quicker.
Sure. Canada's a little risk adverse sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, but the irony of that is they're getting less dollars for the product than they do in the US.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yes, they all make money, they make profit. But if you think about some of the broader market dynamics right now, I think Canada wants to have a competitive mindset.
Absolutely.
And be pushing all the time. And so what happens is I can work with a Canadian customer, it might go a bit slower, and I can work with a US customer and they're all in right from the get-go.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's just a challenge for us.
For
But
sure.
we're committed to making sure we can support the Canadian market as much as possible, especially as we're in their
Especially in
backyard.
this time. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. One of the other things we always talk about on this podcast is impact. It's important to us at Thin Air Labs to create meaningful human impact. And I'd love to know how you think about impact and creating impact in the world.
We've got an opportunity to build the company the right way. And
Mm.
I've worked in many, so
Mhm.
I've got a view on that. I'm very lucky. Dr. Ferdinand Hingel, my CTO, he's come out of academia. He's a wonderful guy, just a real human character. And we spent a lot of time talking about how we're going to build this company in a
Mhm.
way that we can look back and say we did it the right way. And so for me, it's sort of like we accept that there's going to be turnover in the company. Not everyone that's with us today will maybe be there at the end, and I get all that. But for us, one of the impact statements is how do we help them move their journey forward?
Mm.
And so, for example, my first interviews at Ambyint, I don't talk about what we need, what we want. I'm like, where are you trying to get to? Where are you today? Where are you trying to get to? And what do you think you need help to get there with? And I can tell you real quick if Ambyint can help you or not. It's about them. It's not about us.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the compliments we get, because we've obviously had quite a few onboarders.
Mhm.
So I've been meeting with them, they're 60, 90 days in, how's it going? And the first thing they talk about is the people and the culture.
Ah.
So that I feel like we're on the right path now
Mhm.
as it relates to that. But if we did this and, a few people in the company made, a load of money and everything else, that wouldn't be a good outcome for us.
What would be
It's-
the good outcome?
The good outcome is that people that got to work with Ambyint on our journey talk about it at a very high regard around across the people, the culture, the way we work with all our stakeholders, right? That's really important. I think about my relationship with Thin Air Labs, right?
Mhm.
We started out over a year ago. We truly are in partnership. We're expanding the relationship, but it didn't click right away.
Mhm.
And, some people are like, oh, well, move on to the next one. And that's just not how I'm wired. If there's really good people at both ends and the intentional value is high, we can overcome most problems. And so you invest as they did in us and we did in them. And I'm really happy with where we are today. And so those things are just sort of core to us.
Mhm.
This disposability of people and moving on, it's just not me.
Mhm.
It's not what I'm about. And so we're trying to build a culture around that. We're customer first, and that's easy for people to say, but I truly am customer centric. I believe in driving the best outcomes for the customer, however hard that might be. And we're seeing that. So we've got, one of our largest customers in Canada is a huge fan of what we're doing. And when you ask them, they're like, Ambyint's just so easy to deal with. Because remember, we're in software.
Yes.
Software doesn't always get the best reputation for being easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially where I came from, right?
Yeah.
We were tough cookies, right?
Yes.
I'm like, no, we're here to work with you. If the value's there, it'll go great. If the value's not there, we don't want you wasting your time either.
Yeah.
And so you get to do these things
Mhm.
in a smaller setting like ours and with the control we have. You don't always get to do that in the corporate world. And that's a big part of what I enjoy.
Which you enjoy. Lovely. As we talk about wrapping up this conversation, I always ask the same two questions. So you're building Ambyint. You're writing the story for the company. How do you hope that story goes?
There's a short and a long play version.
I'll take both.
Yeah. So, we've been through a period of turnaround and nice growth.
Mhm.
I'd like to see that higher growth period now.
Mhm.
Not this, thousands of percents of growth, but real, meaningful growth. We've got some indicators of that. So we've had these bright spots along the way that would say we're poised for that. So I'd really like to make sure that our strategy lines up against that and those moves are sort of validated in the market. So that's a big thing. I do think creating optionality for the company is really important. So think about it. When I took over, the options were quite limited.
Mhm.
I think the more successful the business, the more optionality you have.
Mm.
So, for example, in my world, that looks like one of the four things. That's we go and we grow and someone buys us.
Mhm.
And if we could keep that Canadian, that would be fun, but it doesn't have to be. But, you scale the company and someone says that's attractive, we'd like that. So that's a win.
That's a win.
You find a partner that you grow with and they say, hang on a second, we love this growth, keep going.
Mm.
So it just keeps scaling and scaling and scaling. And that's got its own journey with many chapters,
Sure.
which will make it super stimulating and fun. As long as we stick to the core principles of which we're trying to work with today, as long as we don't lose those as we grow, I'll be fine with that. There's another world in which, there's a lot of aggregation going on in the market. So there are all these different platforms out there. Why should a customer have to have so many platforms? Someone's got to aggregate those. So maybe we're part of a joint venture or merger with another firm that brings more value to the customer and to our employees. industries. And then the final thing, which no one talks about anymore because it's not that popular, is you could go out to market and say, well, we're going to go launch ourselves as a company in the open market, which we haven't seen many of those.
Right.
But I think that, I'm not scared of thinking of a liquidity event. In this ecosystem in Alberta, we're doing some really good work as it relates to the tech sector.
Sure.
What we're not doing, though, is seeing enough liquidity events. So if you're really going to become a global player, global investors are looking for those ins and outs.
Right.
We've seen quite a lot of ins. We just don't see enough outs.
Right.
And there's a mixed view of that.
Right.
Well, selling early, what's that mean? But if you think at an ecosystem level, if you're not showing enough of those events, the ecosystem itself is not as robust as we might think.
Right.
And that's what we want to be attractive globally. And I know AEC publishes great numbers and there is stuff coming. But I think that liquidity across some companies would be really good. So I'm not sort of like anti-liquidity. If it happens, it happens. But for me, it's more about creating the options for the companies.
Yes.
So you've got a bit of control in the mix.
Sure.
Too many companies, as they're scaling, the control's almost taken away from them.
Yeah.
And they don't get to pick what they want. And I don't want that to be the case for Ambyint.
Yeah. So an ecosystem. Yeah. With some big exits. That'd be cool. That'd be very exciting. All right. And as the venture builder, you yourself, Benjamin, I want to know, how do you hope your own personal story goes?
I'm all in on this. I think we've created an opportunity over the next 5 years where we could do something quite special. But ultimately, what I want to see is that Ambyint's a standard in the industry. And that's beyond any of the economics and everything else. So if you walk into production producers and they're like, what are you using for production? They're like, we're using Ambyint, and that becomes a standard in the industry. I think that's a legacy that I'd really love to hold on to.
Absolutely. Especially for your little one.
Yes.
Yeah. Benjamin, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Leah. I've enjoyed it.
If you're building a tech company in Canada, you've probably heard of Artemis. They're the recruiters founders trust to find the leaders and key teammates who'll shape the future of their business. I know them personally. They're thoughtful, genuinely caring, and deeply connected in tech. The Artemis Canada team treats every search like the future depends on it, because it does. Hey innovators, Calgary is buzzing with groundbreaking ideas and talent. The Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund is fueling our future by investing in innovation to build a diverse and resilient economy. Dive into the details at opportunitycalgary.com. API is helping innovators accelerate from idea to impact. Whether it's pharmaceuticals, medical devices and diagnostics, health technologies, or natural health products, API supports the full journey, from early research to clinical and commercial manufacturing. API bridges the gap between academia and industry right here in Canada.